Okay, buckle up. What just detonated inside Washington, D.C. is bigger than anything we saw in the previous administration. We are looking at a perfect storm, where three explosive storylines are colliding at the exact same moment. The old guard is panicking. You can feel it. This isn't just politics anymore. It's a reckoning.
It's more than a reckoning. It's a structural collapse of their defenses. Think about it. Dan Bongino and Kash didn't just walk into the FBI. They walked into a full mutiny. They're finding hidden rooms, locked servers, and these secret communications they're calling Arctic frost.
And while that's happening, at the exact same time, President Trump torched Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. And not over some political squabble, but over a confirmed $1 billion Somali fraud ring. $1 billion, money meant to feed children during COVID. And it's just, it's gone.
It's gone, and the two stories are directly connected. The fraud happened because the institution meant to stop it was busy protecting itself. This is a comprehensive exposure of failure from the top down.
Stay with us as we expose the full truth right here on News Focus Podcast. If you want the news they don't want you to hear, hit that subscribe button right now. Okay, let's start where the fire is hottest. Inside the J. Edgar Hoover Building, December 2025. This wasn't a normal handover of power, was it? When guys like Dan Bongino and Kash walk in, they're not there to shake hands.
No, not at all. You have to understand, the Biden-era holdovers, the career people inside the FBI, they thought they could just wait this out. For years, they'd perfected the art of burying things, slow-walking investigations, losing files, keeping that covert culture alive behind closed doors. They assumed they were untouchable.
And they misjudged the new leadership's intent completely.
Completely. Bongino and Patel showed up with, as one source put it, a flashlight and a flamethrower. Their whole mission was a full-scale institutional cleanup. The premise was simple. Widespread misconduct happened, and they were there to find it and expose it.
So the mood inside the building must have been electric.
It was immediate tension. The new team walks in and demands access to everything, the most sensitive materials, right now. And the old guard's response was, resistance, delay tactics. Oh, we need to check the protocol on that, trying to restrict access, both physically and digitally.
And this is where the Bureau just splits right down the middle, isn't it?
That's the mutiny. It's not an exaggeration. You have a whole group of agents who were disgusted by the political weaponization they saw for years. They're welcoming this. They want the house clean. And then you have the other side, the entrenched core. And they are absolutely terrified.
Because they know what's in the files. They know what a real audit will reveal about their own decisions.
Exactly. And that fear is grounded in reality because of what the reformers are now getting their hands on. This isn't just about shuffling some papers. Let's talk about this so-called restricted digital vault.
Right. This thing sounds like something out of a movie. A sealed chamber inside the FBI that people only whispered about. When they finally got in, what did they find? What was so high stakes about this one location?
So this vault was a deliberate effort to segregate and, really, to suppress evidence. It wasn't just storage. Sources say they started pulling out what they're calling the Arctic frost files, along with that burn bag scans and a whole library of suppressed reports.
Wait, hold on. We need to define those terms for people. What on earth is a burn bag archive? And what does a nickname like Arctic frost mean in that world?
Okay, so a burn bag is literally what it sounds like. It's material that was designated for destruction. It's supposed to be physically or digitally eliminated so it can never be used in court or in any review. Finding scans of that material is, well, it's explosive. It suggests someone flagged it for suppression because it was so incriminating, but they kept a copy, just in case.
A secret backup of the stuff they were ordered to destroy. Wow. And Arctic frost.
The name itself tells you everything. It means these files were kept cold, frozen, protected from standard discovery, from Freedom of Information Act requests, from congressional subpoenas. These were the communications that went around the official servers. They circumvented all the normal logging protocols. It's a system designed to hide your actions from the future.
So this isn't just poor management. This is a purpose-built system designed for institutional cover-ups. That's corruption.
That is the core implication, yes.
Yeah.
And the contents of these archives are what turns this from an internal HR issue into a full-blown criminal crisis. The sources allege they contain, first, records of illegal surveillance polls.
Meaning what? Spying on political opponents?
It suggests the Bureau was using its assets to gather information far outside of any legitimate investigation, violating internal policy, maybe even civil liberties. Second, they found details on unapproved FISA requests. Any deviation in the FISA process is legally massive, especially when it involves surveilling Americans. And third, and this is maybe the biggest one, internal notes that directly contradict sworn testimony given by high-ranking officials.
Whoa. So notes that prove they lied under oath to Congress.
To Congress, to the Department of Justice itself. This moves it beyond a policy debate and straight into perjury. Obstruction of justice. This doesn't just end a career. This is the kind of thing that sends people to prison.
It's the paper trail they thought they had successfully shredded. The Arctic Frost files are the smoking gun.
They are. It's no longer about interpreting rules. It's about clear-cut, documented intent to deceive.
Which brings us to the biggest name of all, the one who always seems untouchable. James Comey. What did Kash Patel say would happen if Comey's name shows up in this new evidence?
His statement was blunt. Quoting from the source material, he said, "If Comey's name is in these burn bags, oh, it's game over." That is not a casual remark. He's saying the evidence is so definitive, so direct, that any legal shield he has left would just collapse. It turns this whole thing into a potential historic criminal prosecution of a former FBI director.
Game over. That says it all. But it begs the question, if the evidence was this damning, how did he get away with it for so long?
And that's the second part of the story. They didn't win on the facts. They won on the calendar. They weaponized time itself.
Okay, let's get into that. The procedural warfare. The sources are clear. Comey wasn't charged before, not because there was no evidence, but because of sabotage from inside the DOJ. How exactly did they run out the clock?
It's one of the most cynical and effective tactics there is. It all comes down to the statute of limitations. For most federal felonies, the government has a set amount of time, usually 5 years, to file charges. If that deadline passes, the case is dead. Forever. Even if you have a videotaped confession. The system, as the sources allege, was manipulated to let that clock run down to zero.
So all they had to do was stall. What was the critical date here? And who was in charge of the stalling?
The deadline was September 30th for some of the key potential charges. And when the new administration came in, the case was already on life support because of the delays. They identify a key figure, Eric Sabert, a holdover who was in a position of influence from day one, January 1st, 2025.
Wait, day one. So they had their guy in place from the very beginning, specifically to act as a roadblock against these investigations.
That's the allegation. Sabert's job was to stall, to slow walk, to suffocate the case. How do you do that? You delay signing off on subpoenas, you refuse to greenlight key interviews, you demand endless, pointless procedural reviews. Every single day they bought was another day closer to the deadline, another day closer to permanent immunity for the target.
And there's another detail in here that is just, it's mind-blowing. The family connection. Comey's own family.
Yes. The sheer audacity is what's shocking. While this frantic race against the clock is happening, Comey's son-in-law is working inside the very same DOJ office that was supposed to be building the case against him.
Are you serious? His son-in-law. How is that not the definition of a conflict of interest?
It's a profound one. Now, it may not be strictly illegal, but it shows you the level of insulation, the embedded influence they had. It sends a message inside the building. Don't touch this case.
So you've got prosecutors trying to build this historic indictment. They're fighting their own bosses, and the target's family is literally down the hall. It's an impossible situation.
It was. And the final blow was a masterpiece of procedural sabotage. They finally brought in an outside prosecutor, Lindsay Halligan, to try and save the case. But by the time she got there, she had mere days to assemble this incredibly complex indictment covering years of misconduct.
And even that last-ditch effort was blocked. Not on the evidence, but on a technicality.
Right. Her appointment was challenged. They used some obscure judicial review rule about the proper authorization of acting officials. It was a technicality. They basically argued that the person trying to charge him wasn't legally allowed to, based on a rule that their own delays probably helped create.
So they didn't have to prove he was innocent. They just had to prove the person charging him didn't fill out the right form. That is weaponized bureaucracy at its peak.
It's pure paper warfare. And for a moment, they thought they had won. They thought the escape was permanent.
But, and this is the whole point, the investigation was never dismissed. It was just stalled. The statute might have expired on some charges, but the case is now wide open again.
Precisely. And that temporary escape has now become their biggest nightmare. The new leadership isn't just reopening the case. They're coming at it with a whole new strategy. Kash Patel calls it his roadmap. He says, "We have numerous options and we're executing all of them."
What does that mean, practically? If you can't charge the main crime, what are these numerous options, now that they have the Arctic Frost files?
It means you go after all the secondary crimes they committed to cover up the first one. For example, conspiracy charges often have a different statute of limitations. More importantly, perjury and obstruction. Lying to Congress is a separate crime. Every time they gave false testimony, that started a new clock. The Arctic Frost files could be a goldmine for proving that.
So the very act of covering their tracks created a whole new set of legal traps for them.
Exactly. And they can look at different jurisdictions, maybe crimes that fall under military or intelligence law, which have their own rules. Even if criminal charges are off the table for some things, there are still career-ending consequences. Ethics violations, losing security clearances. The point is to hold people accountable.
So the slow walking backfired. They thought they were running out the clock, but they were actually just giving the new team more crimes to investigate.
That's the strategic genius of it. And it's why Bongino's attitude is so important when he says, I didn't come here for friends, get a dog. He's sending a clear message. The old system of backroom deals and political protection is over. Every sealed box, every suppressed report is now evidence, and everyone who touched it is now a target.
Which brings us directly to the disaster in Minnesota, because it shows you exactly what happens when this kind of institutional rot is allowed to fester out in the real world. So while all this is going on in D.C., this bomb goes off in the Midwest, the $1 billion Minnesota fraud. And what's so sickening about this one is who they stole from. This wasn't some Wall Street scheme. This was money for children during a pandemic.
The scale is just. It's hard to even comprehend. $1 billion. The sources point out that's more than Minnesota's entire state budget for its prison system. This was federal money for free meals for kids. And it was systematically drained by a network of Somali-linked nonprofits, shell companies, and just completely fake organizations.
How do you even steal $1 billion from a lunch program? It seems impossible. It would require a total breakdown of oversight.
It did. They exploited the chaos of the COVID relief funding. The government was pushing money out the door so fast, the verification was almost non-existent. These sham groups would just submit fake invoices for millions of meals that were never served. They'd claim to be feeding more children than even lived in a particular city. It was a phantom empire built on paperwork.
And we have to be clear here. This isn't some conspiracy theory. This is confirmed fact, even by media outlets that were friends to the governor.
That's a critical point. The source material highlights that the New York Times confirmed the details of the fraud. When an outlet that has historically given political cover to an administration admits the scandal is real, you know the evidence is just overwhelming.
So if it's confirmed now, the warning signs must have been there for years.
Yeah.
What was Governor Walz's role in letting this rot grow into $1 billion tumor?
His alleged role was to act as a political shield. The sources say whistleblowers inside the state government were screaming about this for years. They saw the suspicious payments. They knew the numbers didn't add up.
And what happened when they tried to raise the alarm?
They were shut down. The Walz administration allegedly used the ultimate defense of our time, political correctness. Anyone who questioned the nonprofits was immediately smeared as racist. They turned a financial investigation into a political attack, which scared everyone into silence. Nobody wanted to be the one accused of bigotry for doing their job.
So they weaponized identity politics to protect a massive criminal enterprise. The fraud could continue because the political cost of stopping it was made too high.
That's the allegation. It wasn't just a failure to see the crime. It was a systemic refusal to investigate it because of the political optics. The fraud grew totally uncontested because the government cared more about political perception than its duty to taxpayers.
And once the dam finally broke and the truth came out, the White House didn't wait. What was President Trump's immediate response?
He acted instantly. He ended special deportation protections for Somali nationals in Minnesota, effective immediately.
And what was the justification for connecting an immigration policy to this fraud case?
The White House framed it as a matter of national security and taxpayer protection. The logic was that a community where a fraud of this scale could operate, involving such systemic breaches, could no longer be granted special protective status. It was a direct signal. If you allow or participate in massive corruption against the U.S. government, that political shielding is gone.
And the fallout for Governor Walz was immediate. He tried to spin it, but it just didn't work.
Not at all. He did this panicked interview on CNN, trying to call the president's action a racist attack, but the facts were too big to hide. Even the anchor kept pushing him. How does $1 billion go missing on your watch? Why were whistleblowers ignored? He had no answers.
He just fell back on the same talking points that allowed the fraud to happen in the first place, but nobody was buying it anymore.
And this is where the two stories, the FBI and Minnesota, merge into one. The billion-dollar fraud didn't happen in a vacuum. It was enabled by the exact same institutional weakness that protected James Comey.
Explain that connection for us. How does the culture in the D.C. headquarters of the FBI allow for theft in the Midwest?
It comes down to one phrase: politically sensitive. The fraud grew because the previous FBI administration, according to the sources, refused to investigate it. Whistleblowers took their evidence to federal agents, and those agents were allegedly told to stand down.
They were ordered not to investigate a billion-dollar crime.
Yes, because questioning these powerful, politically connected nonprofits was labeled politically sensitive by the higher-ups. That institutional fear, the same fear that kept them from touching Comey, provided the perfect cover for the criminals in Minnesota. The old guard at the FBI was happy to let the fraud explode because investigating it was just too politically messy for them.
So the exact same disease, prioritizing political protection over law enforcement, infected the entire system. It protected the powerful in D.C., and it enabled criminals in Minnesota.
That is the deep structural connection. The system wasn't just broken, it was working as designed to shield the politically connected. And that's why the arrival of Bongino and Patel is like a meteor strike. They are finally targeting the people who let all of this happen, both at the top and on the ground.
And with their institutional shields failing, the only thing the old guard has left is to attack the reformers personally. Okay, let's talk about the counterattack. As soon as the walls started closing in, the White House rolled out its most aggressive move yet against the media outlets they claim protected these people. The White House Media Offender Hall of Shame.
This is a really radical move. This isn't just a press release. It's an official government platform. Its entire purpose is to document what the administration calls misleading, biased, and just plain false journalism.
And it's not just a general complaint. They're naming names. CNN, The Washington Post, NBC, Politico, specific articles, specific hosts.
And that's what makes it so powerful. It creates a permanent, searchable public record. A reporter can't just write a misleading story and hope everyone forgets about it in a week. Now it's archived by the government, time-stamped with their name attached to it forever.
And why does that matter so much to you, the listener? Because this was the final shield. For someone like Governor Walz, the media ran cover for him. They framed the story as a racist attack instead of a financial crime. Now the White House is making it impossible for them to do that without being called out on an official platform.
It basically says to the media, your credibility is now under the same scrutiny as ours. And of course, the media's reaction was predictable. They screamed that it was an attack on the First Amendment. But the administration's argument is that they're just exposing the misinformation that allowed these huge failures at the FBI and in Minnesota to go on for so long.
And as that shield crumbles, you see the desperation in the personal attacks they launched against the new FBI leadership. It almost proves the reforms are working.
The smears are so pathetic, they're telling. Take what they did to Kash Patel. They didn't attack him on policy or his record.
They attack him over a jacket. A freaking jacket.
Exactly. They twisted this incredibly tragic moment, him rushing to the scene after his friend Charlie Kirk was killed, and tried to make it sound like he was being vain. It was a transparent attempt to assassinate his character, to distract from the fact that he now holds the keys to the kingdom, he has the Arctic Frost files, the people orchestrating the smears might be named in them.
And the attack on Dan Bongino was even more clumsy.
It was absurd. They leaked emails trying to claim he helped censor documents about Jeffrey Epstein. The whole thing fell apart in 5 minutes when he publicly stated the obvious. The emails were from before he even started working there. The tactic is classic. Just flood the zone with lies and chaos and hope something sticks. Hope the public gets confused and just tunes it all out.
But it shows they know the game is up. Their protection is gone.
And that gets us back to the core of this whole thing. It's defined by Bongino's quote, "I didn't come here for money. I don't want friends. Get a dog."
That's more than just a tough guy line. It's a mission statement. It means the era of backroom deals and protecting your friends is over.
It is. It's a declaration that accountability will follow the evidence no matter how powerful the person is. They're operating under the assumption that serious crimes were committed, and their job is to prosecute them, not to smooth things over politically.
So let's tie it all together. December 2025. Why is this moment so fundamentally different from anything we've seen before?
Because all 3 pillars of the old guard's defense system have failed at once. They used to rely on 1, the statute of limitations to run out the clock, 2, political correctness to shield massive fraud, and 3, a compliant media to shape the story.
And now, the clock running out just opened up new avenues for prosecution of the cover-up. The billion-dollar fraud was too big to be hidden by accusations of racism, and the media shield is being actively dismantled.
That's the convergence. The Arctic frost files are open, the Minnesota fraud is exposed, and the reformers at the FBI have a zero-tolerance mandate. The reckoning they thought they had successfully delayed forever is here. Everything they buried for the last 8 years is being systematically, legally, and publicly dug up. The entire power structure they built has failed. This shift in leadership and access to information means that the reliance on political correctness and time limitations to shield massive financial fraud and high-level official misconduct has officially ended. This sets a new, volatile precedent for government accountability. Previously, powerful individuals could often rely on bureaucratic stalling until the statute of limitations expired, assuming the institution would protect them. Now, with leaders taking over who are willing to pursue secondary crimes, internal misconduct, and the systematic failures that allowed the cover-up to happen, the lesson is clear. An escape from prosecution based on a technicality is merely a temporary reprieve, not a permanent dismissal. The investigation and the truth always remains open.
That's the reality we're facing. But I want to know what you think. Seeing all these threads connecting the bureaucratic stalling inside the FBI, the use of political correctness to shield a billion-dollar fraud, and the dismantling of the media shield, what do you think is the biggest vulnerability that just got exposed in the American system? Let us know your opinion in the comments below. We read every single one. I'm Alex.
And I'm Sophia. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.